Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and I'm so excited to be back here live with you today. And today I'm sharing about a topic that really means a lot to me. It's something that's important in my life and that I've enjoyed doing over the years. And so I'm excited to share with you my knowledge. Here's the thing. So we're going to talk about should probably say that. We're going to talk about um, crocheting and knitting for charity. Here's the deal. I'm going to give you some tips that are useful whether you knit and crochet or make polar fleece blankets or any of those things. Some are specific to knitting and crocheting. Lots of them are just things I've learned over the years running a couple groups whose focus or partial focus was charity. So I want to tell you where my knitting and crocheting journey for charity journey started. We won't go all the way back to the beginning of my journey, but several years ago, I debated trying to figure out how many and I gave up. Several years ago, back when we lived in Ohio, we were a very active part of a church. And someone came to me in the church and said, Sarah, I heard about this really fun and cute event, and I think we should do it. And what that person meant was, I think you should lead doing it, which is fine. There are lots of people who have excitement for things but don't want to be in charge of the thing. As a naturally, some might say bossy, some call it leadership person, I don't mind leading things. So I was excited to start this group. She had a great idea. And what we did was we made baby hats for an event called Little Hats, Big Hearts. This was put on by the American Heart Association, and they made red hats for babies and gave them to babies who were born in February. That is something that they aren't doing anymore. You can check out the American Heart Association's website or just Google Little Hats, Big Hearts if you're curious about why. Anyway, so we did that event. It was a huge success. So many people joined in. Baby hats are a great way to start a knit and crochet for charity group because they're small and people can make them quickly, and even beginners can feel really accomplished. But we did that event, and the hats were due, I want to say like December, because they gave them out in February. And we all looked around and we said, that was fun. What are we going to do now? And we all went, I don't know. And it turns out that it took us a while to figure out exactly what we were going to do. We wanted to continue on our group. We wanted to continue for it to be not only a social group and an encouragement group and a learning place for people who joined us, but also for the focus to be charitable. So after a lot of searching and brainstorming, and this is knowledge that I gained with the help of lots of members of this group, and I really appreciate that. We found a charity that really matched our group well. And so the first thing I want to talk about is if you don't have a charity in mind, or if your charity is something that has an event and then like it's kind of done for the year, but you want to keep either a group rolling or yourself, you want to keep crafting for charity, like where do you go looking for places to donate your handmade items? First, I want to talk about some ideas that we found locally within our community. Obviously, depending on where you live, depending on what services are offered within your community, it's going to change what you have available, but that's okay. So I just want to throw some ideas out there for you. I do want to direct you in the description below is a link to a blog post that I've written, and I've gone a little more in depth with my experiences with some of these places and things that I have found that they're looking for. So I'm going to keep this kind of brief. There's more information even in that blog post. So I encourage you to go give it a read if this inspires you to start something of your own. So if you're searching for places locally, I have found that tends to be a bit more work for you because you kind of have to do some research and make some phone calls and make those connections within your community of who, what donations do they take, who is in charge of that kind of stuff. But once you make those connections, it's a really wonderful direct connection to the people that you're giving to, more direct than doing some sort of national or international charity. It's being used locally, that you're connecting with the charity is connecting with people, and they are servicing the needs of those people. So making those connections can be a little challenging, but once you have those connections, it's super satisfying and really a really wonderful experience in my experience. So here are some ideas of places that you could reach out to locally to see if they accept handmade goods. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. If you are watching this within, gosh, I don't even know how long to say, somewhere close to where I'm recording this, we are in a pandemic still. And there are some charities that had accepted handmade items in the past who are not. Because of our understanding of COVID and how it spreads, some charities that were not accepting at the beginning of the pandemic may be accepting handmade items with certain rules and stuff now. So reach out to these places and talk with them. A lot of times they have people specifically that help coordinate donations. So you just got to find that person and talk to them. So here are my suggestions of places you can contact locally to donate your handmade goods. Local shelters, whether they're a homeless shelter, a battered women's shelter. We worked with a women's shelter when I was in Ohio, and they were wonderful to work with. They were really helpful about what they specifically needed. Another idea that's very popular within the yarn community is a local cancer center or a hospital. Often those places will give hats out to people who are currently under treatment. And so that's a great place to look. I have found personally that when we in the past have made hats for people undergoing cancer treatment, a couple of things to keep in mind is that the yarn needs to be really soft. A lot of times in cancer treatment circumstances, people are losing their hair, and that's can be a sensitive part of your body. And I don't know from personal experience, but I've heard that you can just tend to be a little more sensitive generally, physically when you're undergoing treatment. So really soft yarn is important, and also washable, because a lot of cancer treatments can lower your natural immune system. The hats need to be washable because they can't run around like me and never wash their hats. So just something to keep in mind. A place to donate locally that I had not thought of until we brainstormed within the group that I helped coordinate was a local nursing home or hospice center. The local hospice center is actually where we found our very best partnership. They wanted lap blankets for people who were seeking care through the hospice center. They found that their clients really felt the love and care that went into those handmade items. They would often put them at the end of a bed, and the person they were caring for really appreciated the handmade love and care that went into the blanket. Or if they were in wheelchairs, a lap blanket is perfect. A lap blanket is you can Google the measurements for it. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a smaller blanket that someone can wear just on their lap that's been shown to keep people very warm. And if they're in a wheelchair, they don't have to worry about it getting caught up in the wheels of the wheelchair. We found this was a great solution for our Crochet for Charity group because lap blankets are smaller than a full-size blanket, which a lot of people didn't have capacity for. And even though we had lots of donated yarn, to make an entire blanket takes a lot of yarn. We also found that if you were learning, the shape and size of a lap blanket was great to practice your stitches in. And if you were more advanced, you could make a fancier blanket and still really enjoy the process. So we found a local hospice center to be a really great match for us. A local church might be a great place to donate. A lot of times people seeking help will stop by a church and ask if they have things that person might need. And if you live in a colder climate, having mittens and scarves and hats on hand might be something that a church would desire. I will encourage you, even if you're not religious, a church might be a great place to make a connection, because even if you don't believe in their religion, they can often be a conduit to people in need within your community. I don't know if you have these in your community, but we started one in the community that I lived in Ohio. And when we moved to Wisconsin, I was so excited to see that they were here as well. Many of you probably know about little libraries, and they're just little boxes in front of houses and schools, and it's to bus stops and all over the place where people just leave books. You can leave books and donate them. You can take books if there's something in there that looks good to you. It's a really local, anonymous way to share. Along that line, people have started blessings boxes, and these can be directly associated with a person or an organization. My children's school has one in front of their school, and it's just a place for people to leave items that might be needed, food, personal care items. The one in Ohio that was associated with our church, we had winter accessories that we left in the winter sometimes, and those were always, since it's anonymous, we don't know how they felt about them, but they were always taken. So I assume that they were needed. Do keep in mind, though, that the main purpose of a blessings box is for food and toiletries. They really fill a gap between people who qualify for more official assistance and people who are just struggling to make ends meet. So do keep in mind, a lot of people, the main purpose of those is food and toiletries. So don't fill the entire box with 800 scarves. But if you can drop by a scarf or a hat, once a week, I'm sure they would be greatly appreciated. The other thing is, reach out to your local yarn shop if you have one. My local yarn shop in Ohio collected hats for and gave away hats for people with cancer diagnoses. They did several events throughout the year where items were made, and they collected them and got them to the charities. That makes like super easy. You just have to participate. You don't even have to organize it, and you just take your stuff to the local yarn shop, which if you're like me, you were going there anyways, and they make sure that it gets to all the right places. So that's another great place to look for, or just talk about yarn craft for charity. If you don't have these things locally, or you'd rather go more globally, there are lots of organizations that you can take part in. I'm going to list these a little more quickly. Within my blog post, there are links to all of these organizations. The great things about these global or larger organizations is that they have a system down. A lot of times you go to their website, they're going to tell you exactly what they need. They're maybe even going to give you a pattern for what they're looking for. They're going to tell you how to donate, what to donate, where to send it to. The only thing to keep in mind is when you are sending your yarn craft away. So instead of taking your, 15 hats and driving to the cancer center and leaving them at the cancer center, when you're packaging up those 15 hats and sending them away to a charity, the cost of postage is something just to keep in mind. It was the first time I did it, it was something that surprised me a little bit. So do keep in mind, if you're sending away to a national or an international charity, that postage will probably be part of it. So here are some organizations to look into. Links are in the description below, as well as more information in the blog post, which is also linked in the description below. Project Linus is a great place. They provide blankets. Hat Not Hate gives out blue hats specifically in their anti-bullying campaign in the fall. Warm Up America accepts not only blankets, but also blanket squares. So if you are not a blanket maker, Warm Up America might be a great place to donate some squares so that you don't have what can be a daunting task of making an entire blanket. You can just make part and still take part in making larger blankets. Knitted Knockers, they make handmade prosthesis for women who have undergone mastectomies or other breast surgeries. They started out as a knitting charity, but have expanded to crochet. They've got a free pattern on their website for you to make and send to them. Comfort for Critters, if you love animals, this is a charity that makes things specifically for animals within animal shelters to give them comfort, and then they help, they get to take that comfort item with them once they're adopted to help with transition. The Mother Bear organization does stuffed animals. So if you love to make stuffed animals, handmade stuffed animals, that's a great charity for you. And the Red Scarf Project works with children within the foster care system. That is just like skimming the surface of the many, many organizations out there that use yarn craft for charity. So check those out. If there's something you're really passionate about, do a little searching around. I'm certain you can find something. I want to talk just briefly about what to make, because we've kind of already covered this. You can make all sorts of hats, mittens, scarves, cowls. Warm accessories are a great thing to make. They're small, they're quick, they don't take a lot of yarn, and I don't know about you, but I have more patterns in my pattern library than I could ever possibly make and wear myself. So that's a great way to try out a new pattern, even if you don't need that in your wardrobe. Blankets are great. As I said before, there are charities that take blanket squares and then sew them together to make larger blankets. So you don't even have to make an entire blanket to be part of making a blanket for charity. Like I said, stuffed animals, scarves, all sorts of things. A little searching, and I think, and some trial and error maybe will get you somewhere that you can find something you really enjoy, and that's greatly appreciated by those you're donating to. The how to do it, once you figured out the where and the what, the how is easy. You just need to decide, is this something I want to do by myself? Do I sit in my living room and make hats and quietly send them off to places? I encourage you, gather some people. It's a lot of fun to do it together. Even if you aren't physically together, get a little chat group going with some people you've met on social media that are also yarn crafters that want to be involved in charity. Set a goal for yourselves, or just share your makes that you're sending to charity. It's really encouraging, and it's a really great way to connect with people as well. Also, do a little searching. Your local yarn store might already have a group that you can join in. There might be a church nearby that has a group that you can join in. You can absolutely do it by yourself, but I encourage you to reach out and make connections with people, because that's wonderful too. All right, I want to finish up by sharing with you my personal 3 rules for donating. And this has to do with all sorts of things. These are personal things to me. I feel passionately about them, or I wouldn't share them with you. And I just want to offer them up to you as something to consider as you do donations. So my first personal rule is unwanted help isn't helpful. Let me tell you what I mean. Could I make 20 hats, walk to the church down the street, and leave them at the office, the church office? Yes. Or the local school and just drop them off? Sure. If that church or school doesn't already have a program to get those hats distributed out to someone, I am just creating extra work for church staff and school staff. And let me tell you, church staff, school staff, staff of charitable organizations, those are some hard working people. And they don't need to find a place to donate my hats. And I'll be honest with you, if they're really very overworked, they may not. And your hats, this thing that you've poured your time and energy and money into, may end up going to no one, because it may either get tossed in the trash because they have no time, or stuffed in a closet somewhere thinking they'll deal with it later, and it never gets gotten back to. So if an organization doesn't need what you're giving them or what I'm giving them, it's not really helpful. So consider that in your giving. My second rule is I always want to listen to the people I'm donating to about what they need. Again, years ago, I led a mom's group within the community that I was in. We wanted to do things for charity. We decided we were going to make blankets. We called a local women's shelter and we said, we would like to make blankets for you to give to the women you serve. They said, fantastic. Here's what we need. We need big blankets. The people we serve don't need a little lovey for comfort. They need an actual blanket they can wrap up in to keep physically warm. Had we not called, we might have shown up at their doorstep with a bunch of little like lovey baby blanket things, and that wouldn't have been useful for them. But since we called ahead, and we even told them what we wanted to donate, and they were like, yes, here's what we need from that. And so we made big blankets, and it was a great connection for the moms group. All it took was calling the local place and listening to what they need. The other thing about local charities is their needs shift a lot more because they have direct contact with the population that they serve. They know hats are really needed this year. People aren't looking for hats this year. We need blankets now, or scarves, or, whatever they might need. It can change. And so keep in contact and listen, and then keep in contact to make sure that what you're making is what they need. My last rule is very personal, and I know that there are some people who will disagree with this one. My last rule personally for charitable giving is I never give of lesser quality than I would want to receive. For example, when I was running the Craft for Charity group at my church, we received many donations of yarn. They were wonderful. That was great because then our crafters did not necessarily have to invest their own money into the projects they were making. And for some, you don't have money to make an entire blanket. So donated yarn can be such a blessing. Here's the thing though. Some of the yarn we received was older than I am. Yarn processing methods and fiber content have come a long way. And so some of the yarns we received were incredibly scratchy. That doesn't mean those yarns don't have a purpose. But what that means to me personally is if I wouldn't have made a hat out of that and put it on my baby's head, I'm not making baby hats from that yarn. I will not donate something of lesser quality than I would want to receive. That also means my weird quirk is I never donate off-brand peanut butter. I think it's disgusting. I don't eat it myself. If I'm donating, you're getting Jif or Skippy. I just feel strongly about that. So that is some of my knowledge about crafting for charity. If you have any questions, I'd love to chat. Leave it in the comments below. I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel. I'm going live every week on different topics, and join my email list. I'll send you reminders. Subscribe and turn on the notifications, and then you'll get reminders through YouTube as well. And check out all the links below for charities and a post on my blog all about the how, the where, and the what to donate. Thank you so much for joining me today, and happy crafting for charity.